I really want to hear your opinion as a certified dietitian.
Yeah.
What did you originally think about Ozempic? How did your mind get changed and possibly opened up to possibilities?
Just like anything sensational and like viral, I have my, especially around diets, I have my own, I always kind of raise flags. It's like a lot of alarm bells went on, like, right? It's like, too good to be true. It's like, fast weight loss is never sustainable weight loss.
Yeah.
Those are the thoughts that I had originally, and I was just completely against it. In fact, some of my clients told me they want to go on Ozempic and they want to do those different things like that. And immediately, and this is something that I kind of regretted, like I kind of got against that. And it's like, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. I went on this tangent. And I realized I needed to do my own research. I needed to really try to understand, what is this drug? What does it do? How does it help people? How does it work? Do people need to be on it for long? And I went into this like deep rabbit hole of understanding everything that I could about GLP-1s, which is essentially the name of this drug.
Yeah, tell us. I am truly.
So let's start with the definition.
Well, hi, everybody. This is Diane Gilman, formerly known as the Queen of Jeans, but now the proud host of my own podcast, Too Young to Be Old, also the title of my second book. Well, have you wondered what is all the fuss about Ozempic? Or maybe you're thinking, I should be taking that. Well, guess what? Ozempic has actually improved the entire U.S. economy. 25% of America is either on Ozempic or on a waiting list. And guess who we've got today? Andres Ayesta, who is a dietitian and also an expert on weight loss and Ozempic. Oh my gosh. Andres, I'm so happy to have you on. I have so anticipated this podcast. Just give us a teeny bit of your background and then let's just get into it. I want to know all about Ozempic, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly.
Absolutely. Diane, thank you so much for having me. I'm so pumped to be here. So I'll give you the 30-second elevator speech so you know who I am. But my name is Andres Ayesta. I'm a registered dietitian. I live in Tampa, Florida. My background has always been, whether it was in sports or working people to improve their wellness and performance. I work with professional athletes, a big part of my life. And then eventually I kind of turned into wanting to improve people's health. We created a company called Planet Nutrition to help people essentially create a blueprint for their own health, to help them manage their weight, their health in a way that really made sense for them. And that's essentially what kind of got us to this place that we're currently in today. And I'm in a mission to try to help people. We typically work with parents, specifically like, dads and people between like 30 to 60 or so to help them really overcome a lot of the issues that they have around their weight. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
So Andreas, I know that you had original opinions about Ozempic.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I also know that over the last year and a half, your viewpoint of using it has changed. Now, I want to tell a really quick story. Everybody knows I'm a big storyteller. So I have dinner with a group of professionals the other night. And I say, oh, you look really good, to one of them. And it's like, yeah, I'm on Ozempic. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why are you on Ozempic? You're not even overweight. Well, my doctor said it would be good if I lost about 5 pounds. So I said, well, how much are you losing? I don't know. I never get on a scale. Okay, that's one. Other. Walk into my hair salon yesterday. I know the customer before me. She's small, and I never even thought of her as heavy. And I said, wow, that jacket looks so cute on you. She said, yeah, it's really too big for me now. I demanded my doctor put me on Ozempic. I'm on Ozempic. Andreas, I know so many people that have no need to be on this drug, but obviously can afford it. And then I hear there's these huge waiting lists for people who really need it. and can't get it. Wow, talk about a two-tiered medical system.
Yeah.
I really want to hear your opinion as a certified dietitian.
Yeah.
What did you originally think about Ozempic? How did your mind get changed and possibly opened up to possibilities?
I first heard of Ozempic on TikTok. You know, we have talked about that. We're big fans of the platform, and just like anything sensational and like viral, I have my, especially around diets, I have my own, I always kind of raise flags. It's like a lot of alarm bells went on, like, right? It's like, too good to be true. It's like, fast weight loss is never sustainable weight loss.
Yeah.
Those are the thoughts that I had originally, and I was just completely against it. In fact, some of my clients told me they want to go on Ozempic and they want to do those different things like that. And immediately, and this is something that I kind of regretted, like I kind of got against that. And it's like, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And I went on this tangent. And I realized I needed to do my own research. I needed to really try to understand, what is this drug? What does it do? How does it help people? How does it work? Do people need to be on it for long? And I went into this like deep rabbit hole of understanding everything that I could about GLP-1s, which is essentially the name of this drug.
Yeah, tell us. I am truly.
So let's start with the definitions, because I think if people understand what they're actually injecting in their bodies, it probably would start better, because I feel like a lot of doctors are not really explaining really what these are.
Oh, for sure.
So I think that would probably be a good place to start. So let's try to dive into what these drugs are. So these drugs are called GLP-1 agonists. Okay, it's a class that these medications typically fall under. And the way that they work is that they tend to support weight loss, but originally were created for blood sugar management. One of the things about GLP-1s is it stands for something known as glucagon-like peptide 1. You don't have to remember that. It's just GLP-1, but it's a naturally occurring hormones that our bodies have, and that plays a key role in regulating our appetite and our insulin levels. Now, GLP-1 agonists, they're a specific class of drugs that mimic the action of the same hormone that our body produces. And what it does is it can lead to a lot of important things in terms of weight management, right? Agonist, by the way, just so you understand what it is, it's a substance that initiates a physiological response when you combine it at a receptor in the body. So imagine like a GLP-1 is agonist, is like a key and lock mechanism. Your body cells are full of them. And the GLP-1 agonists, they essentially attach to that. So these medications act specifically on this. And then the magic about these agonists lie in their ability to initiate that natural response. So what happens when people take it? You have better control of your blood sugar, and at the same time, you also have more control of your appetite. So these drugs work the most is by simply regulating mostly your appetite. That's how they work mostly. So most of the people that are taking it, they're just eating less. They have a lot more control around it.
Andres, my friend, who kind of was embarrassed to talk about it, but I forced the conversation. I said, so what are you eating a day? He was given no diet that included anything useful for his body, nor was he told to go on any sort of supplements. And he said, a full day of eating might be one little container of yogurt, but maybe half a container. Maybe there's some days I don't eat it all. I mean, does that sound healthy to you?
No, it doesn't, which is the problem. And this is where I typically draw the line, where like that's not necessarily the best solution, because you're not addressing the root cause of the problem. So I explained that this drug, so GLP-1 agonists, are like all the name brands, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, Zepbound. These are all fall the same category. Semaglutide, they're all part of those like GLP-1 category drugs. They're just different brands. So people understand obviously that they're all the same. They do the same things. But they're a tool. They're a vehicle to help you manage something that is hunger, that is what really affects a lot of people in America, particularly very obese, because very obese individuals, they have like a very faulty appetite control system. So it's not as easy to tell somebody that is like severely overweight or like morbidly obese to just like eat less. there's a lot of components that come into play. It's not just some of these people are lazy. Sometimes laziness and bad habits are part of it, but a lot of times they have like disrupted appetite mechanisms that just keep them hungry all the time. So imagine this person that you're talking about. Imagine maybe what his life used to be like before. Maybe waking up, like having a cup of coffee, grabbing a bagel, then just kind of like snacking on candy from like the office that somebody brought in, and going and grabbing like a slice of pizza down. You're living in Manhattan, right? So like grabbing a slice of pizza, and then like going and grabbing drinks with their friends at happy hour after work. Like you're consuming 3,000 calories and you don't even notice it. And then this guy went from doing that to now having 100 calories or like 500 calories on a daily basis because he's not hungry. There's no food chatter going on. There's just not really kind of having this like drive and need to want to have food all the time. So of course you're going to have a massive drop in weight as a result of that. Now, there's benefits of Ozempic for people that have insulin resistance problems because it also helps you manage your insulin and blood sugar levels. But the ultimate way that these drugs work for most people that take it for weight loss is just helping you manage your appetite. Like, when with that. And then when you eat less, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to lose weight.
Okay. And then what happens when the doctor says to you, all right, you've been on Ozempic long enough, you can't be on it forever, or can you? What's your thought pattern about how long you stay on it and how you form good habits? Because I think you almost have to use a drug like Ozempic as timeout. And now as it should be, I need to learn about myself. Do I want to be vegetarian? Do I want to be vegan? Do I want to be pescatarian? Nobody is educating you. All they're doing is taking your appetite away. And that to me is so deleterious to the individual, especially if they are obese. And the fact that most people that are obese, and I went up to 200 pounds at one point. I'm down to about 130, 35 now. I was a carbo maniac. I mean, carbs were my whole thing, and I didn't even realize it. And I was an emotional eater. When my husband died and he came way down in weight because of chemo, I was taking care of him. I wouldn't eat in front of him. I was so upset. I basically stopped eating. And then I ballooned up like 70, 80 pounds. When he passed, I had to teach myself how to take that weight off. That was 27 years ago. There was no drug except really bad speed drugs on the market. So what's your thought about that? I just see, to me, the bad part about Ozempic is nobody educates you in between or while you're using it.
It's the same.
Listen, I don't understand, how long do you stay on it?
Well, Andre? Let's just first make the point that these companies are promoting the idea that you could stay on this forever. Right?
Is that true?
Yeah, they're like you when you look at a lot of like their advertising and their marketing, like they're saying like just take it for as long as you want to. There's a couple of things that we have to kind of be aware of. Like there's no long-term longitudinal studies looking at the long-term impact of these drugs can have in our health.
That's
and
right.
There are side effects that are documented in a lot of people. There's people that have ended up in the hospital because they have gastric problems, gastritis, they have kind of gallbladder issues because of it. Maybe a smaller percentage comparatively speaking. But you have to be aware of the risks that come with taking a drug and we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be in 20 to 30 years if you're being on that drug forever. So what are my thoughts on it? I think like if you're going to be on Ozempic, first of all, we got to separate who should take it and who shouldn't. I believe that we have to draw a line. I don't think Ozempic and this type of drug should be used for vanity weight loss unless there's an emotional component to eating. I call it the food chatter that sometimes like people refer to, where they just have this very distorted relationship with food that all they think about is food, and they have this like binge eating problems and binge eating disorders. And sometimes the people that struggle with this are not always overweight or obese. So I think There's a specific case on that. Now, the thing with this is like it can quiet down the food chatter in your head to help you manage your emotional eating, but it's not fixing it, right? You still need to work through understanding what the root cause of your emotions are actually going to be. So that specific type of population, yes, they're going to be on it, but then they feel they need to be tied up to that medication. I even spoke with somebody. I had a consultation this morning with a client. He's a 50-year-old male. He's been on Manjaro for over a year. His insurance now is not covering, and he's doing the right thing, which is I want to learn how to build healthy habits for myself. I lost 50 pounds. He needed it because he was obese. It was a medical need, but there was also a combination with emotional eating. And he shared it with me and said, like, it was just a constant food chatter that I no longer had when I was on this medication. So there's a benefit to that. But just to finish this point, vanity weight loss, the person that has 5, 10, 20 pounds to lose just simply because you want to look better for your wedding, or you want to look better for these things, or you're going on vacation, you should absolutely not do that, because what's the point of just doing something rapid if you're not fixing the problem? So these are the people that typically gain and lose the same 20 pounds for 30 years, you know?
Exactly. And it's, I would call it, in my most critical manner, laziness. Yeah. Like, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to have to think about it. You just take this drug. You eat one little container of yogurt a day, if that. The weight comes off, and the problem is I don't think the weight stays off because you learned nothing. When I was diagnosed as 1/4 pound away from the national definition of obesity, which for me was 200 pounds, I had to figure it out for myself. And I thought, okay, this is terrible. And it was mixed with menopause, so it was like this tsunami
of things coming up at the same time.
And I realized that after my husband died, I made food my companion, and I would go home at night, pop a pound, just open up a package of any kind of pasta, throw it in boiling water, open up a can of red sauce, pour a glass of red wine, and that was my whole evening. And I kept telling myself I deserve it. I'm so upset about losing my husband, my life partner. So I knew that emotional triggers were what was dangerous for me. And I just set to work. I taught myself as I went along.
And you did it the right way. So to speak about the strategies, like what to do, is awareness to me is the most important predictor of change, right? So if you're understanding what's going on in your life, then obviously you can start to learn to manage it. So what a lot of these drugs don't do is you're not working through your problems. You're just essentially putting a Band-Aid for as long as you're taking this medication to help you support some of those different things. But you still need to kind of work through habit building. You need to work through your relationship with food, your emotional triggers, your emotional traumas. Our food choices are a result of our beliefs, our memories, our traumas, and everything that we have kind of gone through for our entire life. So we look at this through that lens. And food, it can basically be something that we use as a coping mechanism for anything. Some people go for alcohol, some people go for drugs, some people go for like intense exercise, some people go for sex. Some other people use food as like their way to feel safe, to feel comfort, and to kind of get that instant gratification. That is essentially the definition of emotional eating, when you're just eating out of emotions rather than just eating because your body needs it physiologically. Now, sometimes that gets changed because sometimes that emotional eating. So imagine, for example, if you haven't had anything to eat all day because you were just so either depressed or just feeling down or whatever you were experiencing, you haven't had any food or fuel in your system, and then nighttime comes, and then there's like the whole pantry full of like sugar or whatever obviously you have access to, or you go to a fast food. So one, your body's like deprived, right? So it physiologically needs fuel. And then two, you're connecting it with an emotional trigger and emotional response.
Totally.
So then you're it's a perfect storm, right? So remember those days, like when you were just maybe like not eating anything, like whatever, and then you were just kind of finding yourself at the end of a ice cream tub, right? Like,
I think that one of my biggest revelations in life was when someone said to me, are you aware that when you put carbohydrates like pasta in your mouth, your saliva turns that into sugar. And then, of course, the red sauce, canned red sauce, has a ton of sugar in it. So that was one revelation. The other thing I always watch out for in my brain is somebody brought me back a pound of beautiful Parisian chocolates. They said, "What do you want from Paris?" We're going to Paris. I said, "Oh, the best Parisian chocolates." So I eat one. I put it back in the cupboard. Yeah. About an hour later, I say, "You know what? It won't hurt to eat two." And then pretty soon it's about 6 or 7. And here's my trigger point. "Oh, Diane, you've had a rough week. You deserve it." No, you don't deserve to be eating pure sugar. And the only thing that really keeps me from it, Andreas, honestly, is the fact that having had breast cancer, I know that sugar is a trigger for cancer. So at some point, I scare myself. But I think that if as an individual, you are taking an easy way out, which is what all the people I know taking Ozempic basically believe about it. Hey, why should I struggle? It's easy. Just take away my appetite.
They want a pill.
You're going to go right back to it again.
They just want a magic pill, and they're not focusing on the boring work that is required, which is building strong habits, working through the bad ones that they have, which is really ultimately what leads to success long term. Is like, if you don't learn how to build a strong foundation, it's like building a house on sand, or like a big skyscraper on sand. It will not last. It'll vanish because of the fact that you're not focusing on the right thing. So if you're listening to this and you're considering or are on Ozempic and you're frightened and scared that you're going to be off of it, and like the hunger, because guess what? Hunger is going to come back. And you're going to now have the same appetite. And guess what you're going to do if you didn't work through this stuff? You're going to go back to the same old you that you were before you started without having worked through some of the things. Now, not everybody does that, because some people kind of go through like the wake up moments like you. Like this person I talked to this morning. It's like, I'm 50 pounds lighter. I feel the best I've ever felt. I don't want to even think about going back to where I was. So I want to work in improving some of these areas of myself. But the person that loses like 5 to 10 pounds on Ozempic because that's all they needed to lose and they did it for vanity, they're not necessarily like the pain of going back to where they were before is not really that intense so far that it makes them want to like change their lifestyle and everything else. So they just kind of see it as like this like short-term thing I'm going to do, get the 20 pounds off and everything else. And it's not the right approach to do it. And I think it's, and the last thought, I think it's irresponsible for doctors to be prescribing this left and right. Without absolutely, I think there should be. I think there should be some parameters by which people can be prescribing this, because obviously, I mean, like I'm sure they're making money off of this stuff too. So it's just definitely something that I feel it's a very fine line in here in terms of like who gets prescribed on that. If you go to the doctors, I demand you actually prescribe Ozempic to me. Well, like you have to meet the criteria for it, right? The problem is, it's not just doctors doing that. You can now get it anywhere, right? It's like I walked by like I think it was like I don't know, like some fitness studio, and then there's like a big thing advertised outside. We have Ozempic, we have step down. Yeah, I'm like, how is this possible? They're advertising it in fitness gyms and in studios and stuff like that. And I'm sure they use some form of like third-party doctor that is prescribing this stuff without even seeing people. So it's scary. I think it has a major benefit. I believe so much in these drugs that it can help so many people, because we have a problem here. But it's overused, it's being abused, and I think we just don't know where we're drawing the line on like who should be getting this and who shouldn't, which is again leading to some of these shortages that you're talking about.
Now, I heard this week, I was reading this, I believe, but it may have actually been on CNN. A lot of these drugs, now they're finding second purpose for them. So statins, they said, because they wanted to prescribe statins for me, but I took care of cholesterol and high blood pressure just through changing my diet and becoming more reasonable. But they say now statins have some trigger in them that will not let cancer cells multiply. I'm sure it's specific, but I'm thinking, oh my God, maybe I should be on statins. And then I know that Botox had a second revelation, which was migraine headaches, takes care of those. And now Ozempic, they just came out, Andreas, and announced that they think Ozempic actually blocks heart disease and heart attacks. So I don't know whether this is a major thing or it only is for a certain very narrow amount of the patients that are on it. But it seems to me that a lot of these drugs are now getting repurposed to give them the fuel to keep on prescribing them.
Of course.
And what happens? You're on Ozempic for a year and then your insurance company says, I'm not doing it anymore. How does that work?
Well, the thing too, I mean, I'm pro drug. I think, drugs can actually support people's health in many different areas. Yeah. But at the same time, I also believe like there's a economic, purpose behind this, right? So imagine, obviously, you're finding, let's say there's some true research showing now that Ozempic can actually start to help you improve certain things of your heart and your heart markers and everything else. Now Ozempic can now be marketed and distributed to a whole new segment of their market, which is now heart disease, right? So now 50% of the US population is on Ozempic, right? Because now you can take this one thing for weight loss, and now guess what? You can also manage your heart. Well, let me give you something example of how you can cure your cholesterol and your blood sugar and your blood pressure issues by just losing weight, right? By improving your health, by increasing your fiber intake, by doing all the different things, obviously, that you can do right now. In fact, like this person that I spoke to this morning, that we had a consultation, I asked him, like, you have any health condition? I was pre-diabetic and I had high cholesterol. And then my I have some heart issues in the family. I no longer have none of those things. Okay, why? Was it because of the Ozempic? No, it's because you lost weight. Right, so it's because the weight dropped. Like, you have less fat, you have like a more stable metabolism. All these things happen because of the weight loss that is represented. So how do
you get a more stable metabolism from Ozempic? I would think that your metabolism becomes something different when you're on Ozempic, but then the minute you get off, well, I guess if you step out into the region of massive carbohydrates, which I would, that would be my path, or sugar, then I see the destabilization.
Well, let's just define. I mean, when I talk about stable metabolism, it's like when you have a lot of fat in your body, right? You're like, a lot of fat and adipose tissue in your body. There's a lot of risk for things like metabolic syndrome and different things like that. And then let's say you don't have enough, for example, muscle mass in your body, then your metabolic rate typically tends to be even like, a lot more lower, or like, just inferior compared to somebody that has a body that has a lot more muscle mass and has it's just more metabolically efficient. So when I talk about people losing a lot of weight, and then, for example, also that's the other part too with Ozempic that we haven't even touched on, which is, you can lose all the weight in the world, but you have to really ask yourself, what kind of weight are you also losing? When somebody drops 100 pounds, the likelihood of being 100 pounds of fat are minimal. They're still losing muscle mass in the process. Particularly, I'm going to use example of that. I think your lawyer or somebody that you mentioned was also on Ozempic, eating 1 yogurt a day. You can bet money he's also losing precious muscle mass. And guess what is one of the biggest predictors for longevity for your audience that are like in the older population? Muscle integrity, muscle mass. That's going to help you make your bones stronger. It's going to help you live longer. Right? So then you're losing all this weight, which has a benefit, but then you're also losing a lot of muscle mass when you're not adding the right things. You're not prioritizing your protein. You're not exercising. So then it creates other problems, right? So you fix one, but you're creating others. So that's the other problem with like faster weight loss as well when it comes down to that. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're 100 pounds overweight, we want to get that weight off, right? But then in that process, we have to kind of rebuild certain things that we need to do to help you just live longer,
So when I was going through breast cancer treatment at Mount Sinai, and they were great, But they don't really ever explain anything to you. And frankly, I was just so flipped out over having stage 3 breast cancer. I was going with the program. So I guess they put a ton of steroids and appetite enhancers into my chemical mix.
Yeah.
Andreas, I gained 35 pounds in chemotherapy. 35 pounds. Now, some of it was water weight, but that was hard to get rid of too. I came out at some god awful weight, like 175 pounds. And I had to get that weight off. But between the chemo and the double mastectomy and recovery I lost a ton of muscle mass. So now I've got these very skinny little stick legs and these very skinny little arms, which actually I'm happy about the arm part of it. And this balloon for a middle. So I am your perfect candidate. I lost muscle mass.
Yep.
But the fat around my middle ain't going nowhere. So as final question to you, for all of us who are 55 plus, and most especially women having either started perimenopause, going through it, or after it like me, what is with this spare tire around the middle? And have you got a kernel of wisdom about what to do about this? That's why I keep trying to lose weight, to get rid of the middle part of me, but it never goes away. And then my legs and my arms just get skinnier and skinnier. Yeah. What can I do? Please help me.
There's good news and there's bad news. Which ones do you want first? So the good news is that it's possible. I have worked with people and they're well in their 60s that, that have, when you look at them, they definitely do not look that they're 60. But I've also worked with people that work really hard to try to get rid of the same thing, particularly women. And even just yesterday, I kind of had a conversation with a 64-year-old woman, sweetheart, and she was struggling with that. It's like the pooch, right? It's like the stomach. That's just like, the one thing that you're just so like struggling to kind of keep. The thing is, totally. Genetically speaking, like your body tends to store fat in specific depots. It's kind of like, you're like, for a rainy day type of like, energy storage. And that is the last thing that goes. The problem that happens with that, in the effort to try to get to that last thing that goes, you're also sacrificing other things too. Right?
Yep.
So, and then at the same time, it requires, I always like tell people, when you're just very lean, let's just kind of take you, for example, Diane, like, so you are 135 pounds, 130 pounds, right? You mentioned that. So you will be considered normal weight, like, perfectly stable, like healthy weight, but you still have the pooch in the stomach, right? And you're not comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's not distributed correctly.
Right? So then it's not distributed correctly. It sucks. It's unfair. Now, the thing is, like, when you ask yourself, okay, what would I need to do to get rid of this? Is you're trying to go from a person that is fairly lean or fairly like low weight to even lower or leanness. So the step to get to that place is kind of what I told my client yesterday. It requires a level of effort that most of us are not willing to put ourselves through in this moment. So efforts when it comes down to more exercise, prioritizing your protein, like doing certain things that are just simply going to are not realistic for a lot of the people that want to actually do that. So is it possible? The good news is it can be, but then you have to, again, like push yourself in the direction that is going to allow for that to happen, to get rid of that, because it's the last thing that goes. So I come from a family where my if you look at my dad, my brother, like my grandparents, like my granddad, we all had the same spare tires on the sides. Like it's at the back. It's like this genetic thing. All the Ayestas, we all have it. And I remember when I gained about 20 pounds around when I was like around 30, and I was not comfortable, I was not happy. And when you look at my back, it just had this thing. But even when I lost the 20 pounds, you can still see slight kind of like parts of it. It's something that and I still have. I feel like I'm in pretty great shape right now, but I still have it. So there's genetically predisposed areas of your body that are going to be more gravitating towards storing that.
Yeah, I will tell you that it is a bane of my existence.
Yeah.
And, after there was so many so many pounds of water weight just from the steroids and the chemicals. And I only say this because 50% of Americans are going to have a health crisis with cancer at some point in their lives. And, the chemicals that save you are also the chemicals that kind of give you really an extra challenge as you come out of the treatment. So, I've gone slightly vegetarian. I try to be vegetarian about 4 days a week. I found good ways to cook vegetables, so it's not a torture. People, there's actually some delicious ways to be vegetarian. But yeah, that beach ball body on toothpicks is just killing me.
But you can be consistent. I think here's the advice I would give to anybody 55 plus and anyone really, for longevity and for everything else. First, do not be afraid to lift some weights, right? So resistance training and weight bearing exercise can help you build stronger bones. It can help you build a stronger and better, metabolism, because of the fact that when you're building muscle, you have you have a higher calorie requirements. Your body can process food better. So that's one important area that I'm going to focus. But the other part, and this applies to anyone, even like somebody going through chemo that have been putting on appetite enhancers, if you have habits that have been built for months and years around how you manage your health, how you manage your nutrition, what you eat, what you don't eat, the boundaries you create, and everything else in between, it doesn't matter what life throws at you. If those things are in place and you have that foundation, nothing's going to break that. I had my first child about 15 months ago. How many parents struggle with the weight that they gain when they have their first kid or when they have kids?
Yeah.
And then I talk to those people at 50 or 55. It's now my kids are out of the house. Now I can focus on myself. Why did you kind of let yourself go in the first place anyway? Because there was never a foundation that was created from the beginning.
A friend of mine, and we could talk forever, but we have to end this. A friend of mine had a surprise child late in life. And she said, it's lethal. There's all these cereals with sugar around. And I now have 3 children. And so it's always fast food on the table because there's no time to cook because she works full time. But there does come a time in your life where you have to ask yourself how long you want to be on this earth and then work your way towards it. And I have made me and my health
a priority,
a real hobby, a focus, a priority. And you know what? I say this to the audience. It can be fun. I sort of run my own game show with me. How am I doing? Do I look more muscular? Is the exercise working?
Make it fun.
And, that is, I think, going to be the key. So if you have one final comment to make, otherwise we're going to be talking for 50 hours, about Ozempic, what would you say, Andres? What would be your advice to people?
Do your research. And ask yourself whether you're the right candidate for it and whether you see yourself doing this long term, and what areas of your life do you need to really address first before you get on this so you can actually sustain this for the long term. I think that's the best advice I can give somebody.
One piece of advice I give is, because I was on so many chemicals during chemo and radiation, really watch out for how many chemicals you're putting in your body. Take a good look at every label. I was a big fan of Impossible burgers, and someone who's very healthier than me, said to me, Diane, there is no product where there's a giant 5-inch paragraph below the description of the food that makes the food.
Yep.
That's not a good food. You're better off eating red meat than eating that compound of so many chemicals where you can't even pronounce the name. So This is definitely fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to learning about Ozempic. And Andreas is the founder of Planos, Planos Nutrition. He is a registered dietitian. We will give you all his information. And bravo. I just loved our time together.
Thank you
You're
so
great.
much, Diane. I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.